So here's how I define an open-ended movie. So how this will work, like, okay, so how this works, like, we're now at our climax, right? Let's think about our story as at our climax, right? All this stuff has happened. This is our narrative. We've gone through this narrative. These are arrows in my horrible drawings. And now we're at this climax, right? And in this climax, our character is presented with their final choice, right? So in this climax, there is a choice between, viewpoint 1 and viewpoint 2, right? So what your story is doing at this climax is, when you're thinking about an open-ended story, an open-ended movie will have a character, your protagonist, or whoever is making that final climactic choice. Usually it's going to be your protagonist. If it is an open-ended movie, they do not actually make this final choice between viewpoint 1 and viewpoint 2, right? The story ends before we get to see the choice they make, right? Because ultimately what makes a movie open-ended and what makes a movie not open-ended all comes down to the final choice that the character is making, right? Because choice is setting up the argument of the story. Choice is what it's all about. So choice between, do I agree with this worldview or do I agree with this worldview? And this can be a choice between two different characters. It can be a choice between using your targeting computer or using the Force. It can be a choice between going back on stage and finishing your set, or leaving and going off stage and not finishing your set, right? So in a movie that actually makes that choice, right, this would be a movie that's not open-ended. If your protagonist chooses viewpoint 2, now the story is arguing, your thematic argument is now arguing for viewpoint 2, because the most important choice your character is going to make happens in your climax, right? So you can even think about your entire story is leading up to the climactic choice your character makes in the climax, right? So whichever choice they make now defines the thematic argument for your story. So if your character wins, right, and they choose, let's say they choose viewpoint 2 and win, now you're showing that you're essentially arguing for viewpoint 2, arguing for viewpoint 2 in that moment. If they choose viewpoint 2 and lose, you're arguing against it. Same thing on the other side. They choose viewpoint 1 and win, you're arguing for that viewpoint. They choose viewpoint 1 and lose, you're arguing against that viewpoint, right? And if they don't make a choice, the issue with open-ended movies and why I don't like to do that, you can, but the reason I don't like it is because you're cutting out the fundamental thematic argument of your story, right? What you're doing is you're essentially bringing the audience through this big emotional journey, and then you're not making a statement about it at the end. And a lot of times, if you really want people to be talking about your movie and saying, oh, I thought it was this, I thought it was that, I thought he meant XYZ, the way that happens is by you coming down to the end and making a choice, having your character actually make a choice, because now you're making an argument there, and now it gives somebody to talk, it gives someone something to talk about after they've watched your movie, right? So let's say if I made a statement like, Bitcoin is the best type of money, right? That is an argumentative statement that immediately can invite controversy on it, right? And you can say, well, I don't think so because of this, 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 and I don't. And somebody can say, well, I do agree because of this, this, this. But if you don't make a statement at all, there's nothing for anybody to talk about. And so that's why I think if you really want to get people talking about your movie, you have to make a thematic argument. And if you're going to make a thematic argument, it comes down to the choice your protagonist is making at the climax between your viewpoint 1 and your viewpoint 2.